Welcome on into Conversations. I'm your host, Drew Patrick, and today we have a very special guest joining us. That is the man you know, you love. He's the president of Mansfield University, Dr. Charles Patterson. Thank you so much for taking the time.
It's a pleasure, Drew. Glad to be here.
So I have to start with this because I was doing my research on you, and what is the step in a life that gives your career pivot from a biochemistry major to president of Mansfield University?
Well, you just jump right in.
Absolutely.
Where's the pivot there? So I was I'd say non-traditional student as during my undergrad and grad school. I was married through most of my undergraduate degree, and by the time I got into graduate school, my wife Colleen and I were looking at having children, and so by the time I got my PhD, I had a 6-month-old, if not 1-year-old son. And so, the progression in the life sciences from undergraduate degree to graduate degree to PhD to postdoctoral studies to faculty positions, very long career trajectory. And so I decided pretty early on during my graduate degree that I wanted something different than being just a traditional bench scientist faculty member. Throughout graduate school, I was actively involved in administration, serving on several committees, councils of the graduate school at UT Southwestern Medical Center at Dallas. And it's that administrative work that I really felt completed me in what I wanted to do. I love to see others be successful rather than to really dig down and make myself successful. So I got a lot of pride in seeing others succeed and helping them succeed, and so that was the pivot for me. I had a non-traditional career, I guess you could say as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to say, you're a Mississippi State man, so I have to ask your opinion on Cowbells, because I know that's the big thing down there, that during all the sporting events, there's Cowbells, except inside, I guess, because you can't really have noisemakers inside. But your opinion on Cowbells?
The cowbell is a unique thing for Mississippi State. I was not always a big fan of the cowbell. I'm not a big fan of loud noises like that. So I'd say I could do without the cowbell.
See, I went to a school that had bagpipes everywhere. So, I get it in a way.
Right.
I woke up one day to the sound of bagpipes, and that was my, all right.
It's good in moderation. I mean, do it on the kickoff, ring the cowbell on the kickoff, and then let's watch the game.
Yeah, it's a long, long time there. So let's go through, because I have some of the steps that you took in your career, and I want to talk about some of those. And because I know on a career trajectory, each stop you make, there is something you can take away from that stop.
Sure.
So your very first stop out of grad school was Baylor.
Correct.
What were some of your biggest takeaways in your time there?
Biggest takeaways from Baylor. Wow. Try new things. Baylor was going through a lot of changes as at that time the largest private Baptist institution in the country, and trying to move forward its research agenda to become a research-intensive school. So I took on different roles at Baylor because I was asked to take on these roles and leadership roles, or because I saw a need that could advance the institution and advance the career trajectories of our faculty. And so I would take on things like, developing intellectual property, patents, licensing opportunities for the faculty and the inventions that they create. Those are just gaps that they needed to fill if we were going to become this, research-intensive institution that Baylor aspired to be. So I would take away from that, try new things, and don't be afraid to fail at them.
Yeah, so the importance, though, of one of the things you mentioned was you put on a lot of different hats in that time. The importance of that, especially that being your first step right outside of college. Mm-hmm. So how important is that aspect of things, to be able to do more than just what you want to do and to put on more hats?
I think it's important when you're starting your career. Let's say whether you've graduated from college and you have a bachelor's degree or a master's or a doctoral degree, and you're just getting established in your field, don't say no. right? If somebody comes to you with an opportunity, don't say no. Figure it out. And that's sort of what we did at Baylor to some extent. I mean, we had a pretty good plan to move the institution forward. But when asked, and this has happened not just at Baylor, but throughout my career, when somebody asks you to do something, to take on a new leadership role, to take on a new project, don't say no. Take it on.
That's really good advice, to just not be afraid to, like you said previously, don't be afraid to fail, but make yourself known, like make yourself available to be on these sort of things. So your next step from Baylor was you fell in love a little bit with southern universities, or universities with a directional. And I mean, I guess you can start back with Texas Southern of your grad school, but then Georgia Southern was the stop right after Baylor, the VP for Research and Economic Development for a period there. Georgia Southern, so what were some of the things in your next step that you took away?
Again, it's one of those opportunities I had at Georgia Southern University to come in as an associate VP for research administration. But that's moved its way into being a vice president, and then I was asked to take on the role of being the dean of the graduate college. That one I did turn down initially, but the president was persuasive. He wanted to see some reorganization. He wanted us to move, again, the university in a direction where we elevated graduate programs to, again, elevate the profile of the university towards research. And so I took that on, and we did some great stuff there to move the graduate school in a positive direction. Being the executive director of the Research Foundation, which was responsible for all of its grants and contracts. Again, different roles, different hats, and taking on those responsibilities established my experience and, gave me the credibility and the experience I needed to continue to move forward in university administration.
So with that step, so it was a long time that you were there on that at Georgia Southern with the many hats that you were talking about again. So I want to go back to you were initially turned down the dean role. Mm-hmm. What was said to really persuade you, and ultimately why did you decide, you know what, I'm going to do this, I'm going to try this?
Well, we had a presidential transition occurring at the time, and the former president, as he was retiring, asked if I would take on this role, and I was reluctant because whenever a new president comes into an institution, you always want to be able to respond to what that president wants, and not knowing what the new president would want from the organization, from the university, from his leadership, from his cabinet. I was reluctant to take that on, but once the new president came in, he had this same kind of vision, if you will, for the graduate school and for research and for the direction of the institution. And so once I had an opportunity to understand what his vision was, and it was a combined vision that I had as an administrator and he had as president, I think it was a good match. Georgia Southern was a great institution, still is, and I've very much enjoyed being a part of that institution and moving it forward.
So actually, you probably now know, because you've been on both sides of this, but how important is it to have that same mindset between the president and other administration in there? You can say from both sides the importance of that.
I can. No, absolutely. It is very important. There are different leadership styles, many different leadership styles, I would say, between a president and the faculty, the staff that the president serves, and I truly mean serves, right? Because the president's position, I believe, is a position of servant leadership. You're there to establish a mission and a vision to move the university forward, but you can only do that in concert with the faculty, staff, and students of the university. Otherwise, if there's not a common understanding of the direction of the institution, things that need to occur, things that might need to change, it's very hard to really lead the institution forward. They have to help you lead together as a president.
And then, obviously, there's going to be disagreements sometimes. So where do you have to look for, I don't want to say the word compromise because I don't think that's the right word in this situation, but finding that common ground with people who might have those vastly differing leadership styles? Where is that point where you try to find a common balance?
As the president?
As both the president and another administrator.
I think it takes conversation of understanding. So, for example, if I want to move a certain sector of the university forward in a direction, and there is some hesitation to do so by the division, by the department, whatever it may be, or by the leaders that are overseeing those areas, it comes down to a conversation and determining why they think it is best that they not move in that direction, right? And many times I'll find that there is, to use your term, a compromise, right? There always needs to be a path of least resistance when you're moving something forward. And working with the department, the division, or the leaders in that area, you can find that path of least resistance. Rarely do you find that you cannot find that path. Sometimes the momentum is there. You just need to get everyone else behind it and have that shared sense of purpose. And it can be done.
Is that a difficult thing to do, though, to try and find or have those kind of conversations with people you work with or people who have different opinions?
I've never found it difficult. I've always found it very constructive. You can always have differences of opinion, but you rarely will have differences of opinion when it comes to the direction of the institution as a whole. Everybody always wants to see a university succeed, be sustainable, be something more perhaps than it is. So rarely do we find ourselves at odds about the purpose of moving this forward. You may find yourselves at odds about leadership styles or things like that, but ultimately it's about the institution, because presidents will come and go, and they have. Faculty, staff will come and go, but we're talking about an institution with respect to, Mansfield University that was founded in 1857. So there's a lot of people that have come and gone. What's important is that we leave it better than we found it.
Absolutely. Well, let's go back quickly to your first chance, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word, but your first presidency, where you were the interim president at Georgia Southwestern. So Southern, Southwestern,
it's very similar.
We're moving directional.
Very similar
Just
names,
slightly.
but very different institutions.
But yeah, let's talk about that, though. Your first chance at a presidency and the interim role at Georgia Southwestern, what were some of the things you took from that experience that have helped you here at Mansfield?
Again, it was one of those opportunities where you get a phone call from the chancellor at the time, former chancellor, who said, "Charles, would you be interested in this?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I would." What would you have us do, as an administration? And he said, "Go be president." And I said, "We can do that, whatever that is, right?" Stepping out of a vice president's role and having worked with the president at Georgia Southern very closely, very good friend, very good colleague. I knew what needed to be done at Georgia Southwestern. There's a lot of changes going on in the university system of Georgia at that time. This was an institution that had some enrollment challenges, and stepping onto campus, there were changes that needed to be made. And so making some minor changes to campus, getting down into the weeds, if you will, over the first 6 months, we saw some changes that needed to be made. We made those changes, and we grew the enrollment quite significantly over the 2.5 years that I was the interim president. So again, going back to my experiences at other institutions, it was an opportunity. A door opened, I walked through it. But it was my experience in the past that helped establish my, credibility, experience, whatever you want to call it, for the chancellor to give me a call and take the chance on me being the interim president.
Now, I want to go back to one thing you said there, because I think it's a very interesting thing when you go in and know that there are some things that need to be changed and some things that need to be addressed. And I know here at Mansfield there were some things that needed to be addressed, but there's also this great tradition of how things have been done. So where is that balance between tradition and innovation that you kind of have to find to help a university grower to help, for example, that has helped boost Mansfield University?
Well, there's some traditions that you're not going to change, and you don't want to change. You look at our history of athletics, for example, here at Mansfield. Being the first university to play football under the lights, right? That's a tradition, and it's a tradition that should be carried forward as part of our legacy and our brand and our sense of being for our athletic programs. That's something that doesn't require changing. But there are other aspects of campus, just small stuff. It may be signage around campus. It may be, me coming onto campus, and this is not unique to me. It happens with other presidents, but you come onto campus with new eyes. You see things that others haven't seen before because they're so used to seeing it or so used to working in that modality that it just becomes commonplace to them. And it could be processes that are burdensome. It could be the visual aspects of campus, or it could be something as innovative about the way we do business or the way we interact with industry or the way we, how we approach fundraising or something else. You bring with you experience, you bring with you ideas as a president, and then you test those things out to see if they'll work on a campus like Mansfield University.
And it's odd because too, talking about, yes, the traditions, but as you said, sometimes the way people are used to doing things, and there might be a better way, and that sometimes can be a challenging conversation with them. Have you found that is a challenging conversation with some people?
I don't think it is, because I don't ever approach it as this is the way, that this is the way we will do it. I approach it as, hey, we've got an idea here. What if we did things like this? Okay, so one of the things, and you're getting kind of, you're peeling back the layers, right, a little bit to my leadership style. But the conversations that I might have with my cabinet, my president's cabinet, right? These are my direct reports who report to the president in the different divisions we have on campus. And one of the things I've always told them from day one is, when we sit at this cabinet, you are all presidents. That I am, by title, the president of the university, but we're going to make decisions as a group. And I want to hear from you in your role, not just as a dean, not just as a vice president for academic affairs. I want to hear from you as though you are the president of this institution, especially if you have ideas that you think are strong enough and you are an advocate for these ideas to implement them or to change the way we do business here at the university. So I call upon them to act as presidents in that way. So the conversations that we have are not autocratic. They are really democratic in the way that we approach certain decisions.
And I want to go quickly to the last step before Mansfield University on your career was the United States Department of Education, so the big boy up there. I was a senior advisor for executive outreach. First of all, how did this job come about, and then what were some of the things, again, that you took away from this one?
Yeah, that was a unique experience, honestly. How did I make that decision? So let's step back. So I was asked to be the interim president for a short term, and that short term turned into about 2.5 years. Okay, and during that 2.5 years, this was at Georgia Southwestern. During that 2.5 years, I was away from my home institution, Georgia Southern. I didn't leave. I wasn't a permanent employee. I was an interim president. But when you're gone for 2.5 years, things change. Yes. Despite staying in contact, and during that time they'd had another presidential turnover. Things were changing. The institution itself was going to go through a consolidation. It was going to take on another institution in Savannah, Georgia, and so there was a lot of missing pieces. And by the time I got back to coming back to Georgia Southern, things had just changed too drastically, and I felt it was time for me to move on into something different. And I had a call from the new chief operating officer of the Office of Federal Student Aid that provides, all of the funding for higher education. And he said, "Why don't you join my team? We've got some innovative things that we would like to do for federal student aid, and I think your experience as a president is something that's missing within this environment in the department." And it's true. The Department of Education, for all the things that it does, sometimes having that personal experience of somebody who's been on a campus, who has run different divisions on campus, who understands the student experience and the faculty experience, is sometimes missing from the discussions. And so my contribution for that was to bring that campus experience to the Office of the Chief Operating Officer at Federal Student Aid. And especially, too, how that office interacts with presidents. Because it's a regulatory agency, it doesn't always have that hands-on approach with presidents who are ultimately responsible for the sound uses of federal student aid. So that's the experience that I brought to that office.
And I think the fact of that experience that you had, then coming back to a presidency, definitely is important to have. And what are some of the things specifically from that you brought into your second presidency here at Mansfield? No interim tag attached here. The full presidency. What were some of the things you brought from that and have learned from that step in between that you feel has made you a better president today?
Well, I think the 2 years that I spent at the Department of Education in Washington, what I missed most was the campus. And again, it's that disconnect that really exists between the business that occurs in Washington, and as well-meaning as that is, and it's really well-meaning, and the decisions that are made, despite what you hear in the news, despite what you might you might infer from what you hear through the news, we are really focused on the institutions and the students. But what's missing from that is being on a campus, getting to see the students succeed, getting to interact with faculty, seeing an institution like Mansfield University, being immersed in the campus culture. That's what I missed most. And so coming back to a campus after 2 years, that's really what I wanted to see. And I'd been looking at Pennsylvania for quite a long time as a president. And there are some great things that we can do here in the state of Pennsylvania in state higher education that I'm very, very excited about. So what did I bring from that? I brought the knowledge of the kind of the initiatives of the department, the innovations that we made with the FAFSA and moving it to the mobile environment and ed tech, if you will, education technology. All of the things that I would like to see deployed across the United States, I had a hand in touching and feeling and getting a sense of the future of higher education. And so I want to bring little bits of pieces of that back with me. I wanted to bring my experience leading an institution like Georgia Southwestern and increasing the enrollment there, and we have here at Mansfield as well. So all of those different components and learning experiences I was looking forward to bringing with me.
And I'm not trying to, pry is the best word, but what was it that you knew? Was it specifically that this Mansfield University job was an opportunity, or were you thinking you mentioned you missed that on-campus feeling? Was it that you knew, I want to get back to being on a campus, or was it an opportunity that opened up, or a mix of both, for ultimately why you said Mansfield's a place where I want to be a president?
I wanted to be a president at Mansfield University. I mean, there were other opportunities, but Mansfield was, it's a jewel. It really is. People come to Mansfield and they fall in love with it. Doesn't matter if you're a faculty, a staff, a student, a president. Once you're on campus, it's beautiful. And that attracted me. It also attracted me because, of the changes that are going to and have already started to cement within the state of Pennsylvania. We're going to be a bit innovative in the state towards higher education and the sustainability of higher education. And that attracted me to make real change, but again, change for the benefit of students. It's about students, absolutely. Student experience, student success, the career trajectory of students. This is why we're here. And so that excited me. It's to come into this realm at this point in time in PASHE's history to help move not just Mansfield forward, but also the system for the benefit of Pennsylvania students.
I agree with you 100% on this area. It's a wonderful, wonderful area. It is a jewel, this place, 100%. Obviously, with Mansfield being in the PASHE system, PASHE, I mean, it is a very different area than where a lot of the other PASHE schools are in. So what is the challenge of you, I guess, trying to find that, again, balance between things that are great for PASHE and things that are great for Mansfield at a different area than a lot of these other schools?
Yeah, that's the unique aspect of Mansfield, right? We are in the north central Pennsylvania area that's largely devoid of other higher education institutions, which is both a blessing and not, I wouldn't say a curse, but it makes it a challenge for Mansfield. If a student is coming to Mansfield, they have made a conscious decision to come to a destination campus in a rural environment with strong academic programs, to have face-to-face, one-on-one interactions with faculty, and right outside of a pandemic environment that we find ourselves in. But they're making a conscious decision to be a Mountie. And if Mansfield's not here, right, and we're not saying it's not going to be, but if Mansfield's not here, it's an education desert, largely, because you don't have the technical colleges, you don't have the community colleges. And what I want to do is continue to reinforce this idea of Mansfield being an anchor institution, an institution that helps drive economic development, workforce development in an area that is hungry for it, and it is. And so to help have a hand in molding the future of Mansfield University for the benefit of our students and the benefit of the region is why I came here. So I'm not sure if that answers your question or if I just got off into dream world.
No, 100%. Yeah, like it's I agree that it's a area where, like, if it wasn't, there would be just this desert, as you put. You're 100% correct. So finding that or what are then the challenges specifically of when you're talking with a PASHE group and when you're seeing things done, what do you kind of have to say to be like, hey, that thing for a city like atmosphere, I don't want to throw any other universities under the bus with this, but who have city areas around them, that might not work for Mansfield. Is there a time to speak up on that, or is there just, or what do you do in cases like that? I guess that's where I'm trying to go with this question.
Sure. I mean, these are ongoing conversations that we have as a system, right? With 14 institutions, we all look somewhat similar and somewhat different. Okay, what I mean by that is, as a system of 14 institutions, we really don't have one of those institutions that has emerged or evolved, even as old as the system is, and some of these institutions are. Not one of those institutions has emerged as, you know, a research one institution, right? Bringing in hundreds of millions of dollars in grants and contracts with NSF, NIH. None of them have emerged as the engineering institution or a medical school or something like that. And there's reasons behind that. A lot of them deal with the revenue and the cost structure of these institutions and the inability to make those investments with the environment that we're in. Okay, so that's how we all kind of look the same, but we're all very different because some of us are situated in very urban environments. Some of us, like Mansfield, are situated in very remote and rural environments. And we're all different sizes. I mean, Mansfield is one of the smallest institutions, aside from Cheney. That is a challenge, right? And so as we look at system redesign of the state system, and this idea of sharing resources, sharing faculty, sharing staff, Mansfield is, again, very unique in that because we're not close in proximity to any other institution. So if we're going to share resources in that way, it's going to be at a distance. It's going to be in ways where we need technology to bridge that distant divide, if you will. So we might see two institutions come together that under an integration model or a sharing model that are in close in proximity. It'll be very easy for them. For Mansfield, it's going to be a little bit different of a model. And so we need to make sure that any decisions that are made locally or as a system take into account the unique aspects of Mansfield University.
Absolutely. I want to go to your first year here.
Okay.
Let's go to that very first day and welcoming. And what were the things that you had planned or the very first day? And then, because I know it happens and I know you know it happens, how did all those plans get turned up their head and you really have to adapt right away?
It's hard to remember my first day. It seems so long ago, even though it wasn't. It was a little over a year ago. But I kind of phased in. So there really wasn't one day where I just landed on campus and said, "Hey, here I am. I'm the guy," right? It was more of getting the family in first, right? The family is very important. So I have a son who's 18. I have my wife as well. We both live here on campus. So it was a matter of getting them into the president's residence, getting them moved in, making them feel comfortable, and then spending some shoulder-to-shoulder time with the former interim president, Peter Fackler. And he did a great job of stewarding the institution during his time as the interim, so I loved having that shoulder-to-shoulder couple of weeks with him, just seeing how he managed the institution while he was here, learning a little bit from him, different aspects of campus and the community. And it just kind of eased on into it, really. So it wasn't just a milestone. It was more of easing into it.
And not a trial by fire, which is a good thing that
Yes.
you had a chance to ease into it. So with the first year, what were some of the things? Obviously, the end of your first year, there was kind of a big old wrench thrown into the plan, but I don't want to get there yet. That very first semester. And I remember I don't know if it was the new students welcome back, but you gave out your number to the students to say if they had an issue. Was there ever a point during that year that you regretted that decision?
Never. No, what you're referring to is that I give my personal cell phone number out to all the prospective students, their families and friends when they're here for visit days. In fact, especially now as we're transitioning through this environment of this pandemic, it's a good resource for parents and students to reach out to me when they have questions, they have concerns. I don't ever regret it.
Good. That's really good. Have you had a call though that was like, all right, it's 2 a.m. I'm getting a call, or have you gotten any late night calls from a student?
No, for the most part,
that's a good thing.
Everyone's very respectful.
And I hope I'm not jinxing it.
No, not at all. I mean, on occasion, I will get a call from a parent from a former institution, right, Southwestern, and I just have to say, not the president anymore, but I do know the president. I will give you his number. But no, everyone's very respectful of your time, your commitment to giving out your number. They don't abuse it. It's really great when I just get a text from a parent or a student that says, this went on today and this was a really good event, or my son or daughter is very happy. And those are the good texts I get.
That's great to hear. So part of that goes with relationships, and I've talked on a lot of different shows that I've had with some of the coaches here at Mansfield. One of the things I had talked with them always about was building relationships. They have that relationship with their student athletes. You obviously probably not as hands-on relationship as the coaches do with the student, but how important is that relationship with a student and their president?
Oh, I think it's a key relationship. It's one of the things that Colleen and I enjoy doing is interacting with the students. It's been a challenge, as you might expect, through the pandemic, right? You're not supposed to come together in groups. You have to remember. So I came in last year. My first full semester has only been the fall semester, because the following spring semester we pivoted mid-semester to a fully online environment because of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. So throughout that fall, Colleen and I would hold, impromptu s'mores, fires at the house, and we'd have students over for dinner in the house. We would entertain in the house. We did all kinds of stuff. We try to go to every athletic event that we can to support our student athletes, and we try to encourage other non-student athletes to come to the games and help create that environment of togetherness, and to continue those traditions, if you will, of Mansfield. That's just one of those. So we're very hands-on. It benefits that relationship to live on campus, so we're always seeing the students. I mean, you can eat in Manzer Dining Hall and see almost right into most of our windows in the house. So we enjoy it, and it's very important to us.
And actually, I want to go and talk about one of those traditions that you added last year, which was the jerseys. Obviously, there's not going to be a Mountie run this year. Probably not okayed by the CDC guidelines, but that was something that you brought in. Where did that idea come from, and to get students a Mansfield jersey so they felt part of Mansfield? Every student who wanted one got one. Where did that idea come from?
A little bit of different places. I mean, Baylor has a similar program where they buy every freshman a jersey, and they can put their name on it, and they have their graduation year there. So a little bit of it's borrowed from Baylor, a little bit of it's borrowed from Georgia Southern University. And again, it's like the experiences that you have as, being on these different campuses and being a higher ed wonk, if you will, the nerd that I am, about, reading about what other institutions do and their traditions and how they're moving institutions forward. You take little bits and pieces of your experiences and what you learn, and you mold that into something that you'd like to see implemented on your campus. And the Jersey program was just an example of that, where I thought, if we're gonna bring students together, this is something that helps unite them, helps get them out to games. And I saw students wearing them around in the community, wearing the jerseys all over campus, and I still see them today.
Yeah. Is it a hard thing? Because I know this happened because we got calls in athletics too, because it's a jersey, so they think we had things that be like, no, they're for students.
Yes,
I know you want them. The rest of the community.
That was the rule. Nobody could get a white jersey unless you were a student, and they really wanted them. So we came up. Well, what's an alternative? So we came up with the black jerseys, right? So red and black. This will work. So we came up with black jerseys that alumni and others could have. One of the biggest criticisms I got was from one of my own trustees, who said, "I want a white jersey." I said, "You can't have it." What, you're telling a trustee that he can't have a jersey? I said, "Yeah, it's for students. It's not for you."
Yeah.
So we came up with the black jerseys, and we saw a lot of alumni posting pictures to Facebook and Twitter with their black jerseys on. So hopefully we'll continue that again very soon.
That's got to feel good, though, that you put a lot of work into getting this started, and you got a reaction like that. Even though you might in the moment feel upset that you have to say no to a trustee or to someone like that.
But he's a nice guy. It's okay.
But to have a tradition that you brought in, or a new tradition that has already had an impact like that, that's got to feel good in your first year.
It does, but it is something like I'd like to see started here, but you really can't start traditions. Traditions happen on their own. So if this takes hold and it continues every year, which I would like to see, right? If it continues every year, great. If it doesn't, we will have tried. And if it failed, that's okay too. We will have tried. And we made a lot of students and alumni happy during that time, and maybe we'll see other traditions emerge. It won't be the last time we've tried. I've got another one in my backpack that I think we'll pull out eventually.
All right. That sounds
a little
exciting.
teaser for you.
I like it. So I want to go then to the spring. Obviously, when the global pandemic hits, it's in no one's plans to what were, and I mean, I guess what still are the challenges in adapting to this new normal that the world and the entire country has to deal with.
It depends on where you're at in the continuum of the calendar, right? So if you look at the end of spring last spring, and then getting into the summer. Throughout the summer, institutions are trying to decide what are they going to do in fall, right? So you're trying to really look into the future and say, what is the campus going to look like? What is our instruction going to look like for campus? Are we just going to be face-to-face? Are we going to do some hybrid modality of instruction. Maybe that's face-to-face, maybe it's remote, or we're just going to go completely remote. And we start to make different decisions based on, again, the factors that are all around us. And we talked about being an urban campus, being a rural, remote campus. Mm-hmm. And for Mansfield being a rural institution and the level of COVID-19 infection that we see around us, we start to decide, I think we might be able to open in some modality, right, to mitigate risk. Mm-hmm. Because if the students hadn't come out and said, we want to come back, if the parents hadn't come out and said, we want our child to attend on campus, right, we wouldn't be face-to-face. It is because of their desire to do that, and we have to weigh that with our ability to keep everybody safe. Mm-hmm. This is how we ended up with about a 25% face-to-face, 75% remote instruction. So the decisions that we make throughout this process are assessing and reacting to what is around us. And that will continue to be what we do throughout the fall semester. It's so critically important, and I cannot emphasize this enough, that everybody take precautions to mitigate the risk and the spread of COVID-19, because we are one of the few campuses that remain face-to-face. Mm-hmm. And in order for us to successfully complete the semester and not have to pivot to something we had to do in the spring and go fully remote, it's critical that everybody remain safe and take those precautions of wearing a face mask, don't convene in groups, wash your hands, all of those things we need to do.
I mean, we're in separate rooms, you and I.
That's right. I mean, we're doing a podcast at a distance between glass. So,
yeah. So no, but I think, and obviously it's a day-to-day change in all of this. There's things that come out, and it's an impossible really decision to make for you guys of really any of these decisions. But I want to go back to one of the things that happened with the group that graduated this past year. They obviously didn't initially get to walk because they were at home because of safety precautions. But one thing that you guys had promised them is, we're going to find a way to safely give you that moment. And so you were able to, over this past summer, safely give these students that moment to have a graduation. It was on Carl Van Norman Field. It was spread apart. How important, and what were your emotions during that day?
Well, I've done dozens and dozens of graduations, right? This one was particularly special because it was very clear that students didn't want a virtual ceremony. They did not want to wait until maybe the fall when we might have another ceremony. They wanted their own ceremony. They didn't want to share it. Mm-hmm. And they wanted to come back to campus, and they wanted to have it somewhere where they could walk across the stage and celebrate their accomplishments. And I promised them that we would find a way for that to happen. And so we had to wait until we saw a decline in infections across the state, right? And the governor has, at that time, their traffic light model of red, yellow, green. And once we turned green, then we could start to plan for our spring commencement, our rescheduled spring commencement ceremony to bring our graduates and their families and friends back, but only to the tune of about 250 total participants, and that includes volunteers, staff, students, and families. And so we had to break that up into two ceremonies, which is not a big thing to do. I don't think we've ever done it here. I think it's the first time we've had two ceremonies in a day, but we used to have 3 or 4 ceremonies in a single day. It was nothing but graduations. And it's tiring, but it's exciting to get up there and watch our students cross the stage and fulfill a promise that the university said, you're going to come back, and we're going to make sure we celebrate your accomplishments. And it went off so well. Everyone was respectful. Everyone was orderly. For the most part, everyone wore their masks. There are some who just, will do the chin strap thing, or they'll do other things. But they were very respectful, and I think the graduates really appreciated it.
Is it hard not, just instinctually trying to shake their hands when they come across the stage.
It really is. I mean, there's a lot of debate there, right? Do you hand them their diploma cover? Do you just put it on a table and they'll grab it when they go by? Nobody wants to just grab a diploma cover off a table. So, you glove up and you put your arms out as far as you can, and you get close to about as 6 feet as you can. But it was meaningful to them. I think it was meaningful to me, and I think to the students too, to have the president bestow upon them, right, their degree or their diploma cover, and to take that with them. So that's what we did.
Yeah, and it's because that was the one thing, because I remember when I graduated and shaking the hands, I was like, they can't exactly do that. But I'm glad that you guys found a way to make that work. And with the 2 different ceremonies, were your speeches a little different with each of them, or were you tried to get right on the money?
Mine weren't. No, mine weren't. Well, one of the things that I implemented when I came here is a script, right, for everybody. And that's meaningful because you don't want what should be, maybe an hour-long ceremony to turn into a 2-hour ceremony because our speakers or even my cabinet wants to get up there and droll on and on. No, that's not why they're here. They're really not here to listen to you. They're here to watch their friends, their children walk across the stage. They're going to forget everything you said. So let's be specific. Let's be concise. Let's have our parts. Let's listen to our guest speaker. And Steve McCluskey, of course, was our speaker, and he did a phenomenal job of talking about his experiences with his son, Zach, who I've met, and he's just a great story there. And there were tears, in the audience. And that's what you want from a speaker. You want someone who you're going to remember. So it was really good.
That's absolutely great. And Steve, I'll tell you from personal experience, that man can talk to me for an hour, and I'm listening to every single word. I am lingering on every single word that he says. So obviously this is a very stressful job at times for you. So not to get like dating game about it, but what are some of the things you try to do to relieve stress and to unwind after a particularly stressful day?
Oh, gosh. I don't know, Drew. I probably play too much Clash of Clans on my phone, and probably a little Pokemon Go on my phone too.
That's fine.
It's mind-numbing, silly.
You're probably in a good spot too, where where the house is, because aren't there like?
Oh, it's great, man. It's great. I don't have to go anywhere to steal some Poke Gems. It's good. So yeah, that's what I do, and Colleen will get on to me all the time about doing too much of it. But I really don't have an outlet right now. Those who know me, who have seen me early on in the beginning of the semester, know I have a Ducati motorcycle, which is currently in the shop, and if it ever gets out again, I might take to some mountain roads before the cold weather comes. And I'd like to do more of that in the future, but I don't really have an outlet. This job is 24/7, right? It's a good thing. It really is. I'm not complaining at all. The job is not a job. The job is a lifestyle. It's something that you choose to do. You're always going to be on call. You're always going to have parents and students calling you, staff, calling you with concerns. And that's what I love about it. It's not 8 to 5. I didn't like the 8 to 5 in Washington, D.C. Driving in, traffic wasn't bad. I would zip through with the Ducati. I'd zip through traffic, get to the office in maybe 10 minutes, and living in Capitol Hill, it was pretty easy. And then go home at night. And when you were home at night, it was done. Nobody called you at night. Nobody interrupted you. You had a life outside of work. It was okay, but I find fulfillment, and Colleen does too, about being an integral part of the community and the campus, and blending those is where our calling is. So I don't have an outlet, Drew.
You said though one of the things you love most about this was the way you were able to serve the students. So I get that 100%. Checks out in here.
And then that's one of the hard things. You can't always please everybody, right?
Absolutely.
And I struggle with that. I like it when students are happy. I like it when parents are happy. I'll go out of my way. Sometimes you can't always go out of your way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes, this is a learning experience, and Tough love is sometimes needed. That, and I struggle with that a little bit, even in my own home, I would say.
No, that's definitely a thing to. It's hard to be hard on someone, I guess, is the best way I can put it.
Well put.
So I'm now going to move. There are two questions that I'm going to ask everyone on the podcast that really have nothing to do with anything, but it's just. I don't want to say it tells me who you are, because that's not at all what these are. These are nothing questions, but it's a fun way here to get to the end of this podcast. So the first one is, what is your go-to meal that you make when you're making a meal to impress?
That's a terrible question, Drew. I don't cook.
Well, exactly, which is why I asked it, because people are like,
I don't know. Give me a different question. Give me a related but different question, Drew. For those of us who don't have time to cook.
Well, then, I mean, it can be, what type of restaurant is your go-to restaurant to take someone to impress?
So let's look in D.C. So we'll use D.C. as an example. Just a really good Italian, hole-in-the-wall, that's really, really good food, but nobody would really know about it unless you were local.
I feel you. So a secret spot type.
A secret spot, yeah. Some good wine, some good Italian food, and some privacy, right? So you can really sit down and have a good conversation with friends, or maybe it's a business meeting, and you're not distracted by all the tables around you. Someplace, and if they really have it, a private room.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And see, a place like that can easily become a spot, like a go-to spot for you and whoever you're bringing.
Absolutely.
And then the second one is in 3 words or phrases, and I'll give you my example because I've done it quite a bit. And as a president, I guess you've done a lot of speaking. What is the worst public speaking moment that you have done in 3 words or phrases? For me, it is high school game show bleach. And there will be no follow-up question.
My worst speaking engagement.
Or, for example, like your most... so mine is pretty much like my most embarrassing moment.
Yeah. I don't know, Drew. I mean, there was a time when I was invited to be the closing remarks of an entrepreneurial event in downtown, and I gave some remarks, and it was a closing ceremony. Basically, everyone needs to leave as soon as they hear from me, and I just invited everyone to stay and drink some more and eat some more, and they did. And then they were like, "No, it's time to close." And I'm like, "But I just got here, So no, it's not. We're not closing. We're going to stay open at least another hour so we can all mingle." And I kept them open for about another hour. So
that's fair.
I said the wrong things, but it turned out to be a good event.
Hey, if you can make something good out of something that's not so, it's brilliant there. Well, I wanted to thank you so much for taking the time here to come on and talk a little bit about your career and a little bit about your first year here at Mansfield.
Thank you, Drew. Look forward to coming back anytime you'd like for me to.
Absolutely. Well, thank you once again, Dr. Charles Patterson, the Mansfield University President. Thank you all so much for listening and tuning in, and we will have another great episode of Conversations for you coming up soon. Thank you so much for listening.